What's up, friends? Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and create thriving communities. Enjoy this next episode.
Welcome to Web3 Academy. It's the Web3 Academy Spotlight, and we've got an awesome member of the community in here today, Eda Akturk, that we are putting the spotlight on. Eda is a Web3 enthusiast, previously spent some time in the corporate world, and recently made the transition to full-time in Web3. And we're here to have her share her story with us today and to dive into some of the specifics of building a role in Web3 and what that means, making that transition, and participating in the communities of Web3 and how exciting that is. Welcome, Eda.
Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Awesome, we're super excited to have you. So why don't you start by just introducing yourself and telling the listeners a little bit about your background?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Eda, and I like to describe myself as a Web3 enthusiast. I recently transitioned to this space, so now I'm working at the Helium Foundation on community and developer relations. Just to go a bit back, like what I was doing, I have a software engineering background, started out as a software engineer, and then moved to technical sales. So I was in technical sales for the past 2.5 years, working at Cisco in the networking space. And then I guess we'll dive into how I fell down the rabbit hole. But then most recently, I transitioned to Web3. So now I'm working on the community and developer relations side. It's been 2.5 months. So yeah, super happy to have made it here.
Awesome. We're super happy to have you here. So let's start a little bit about how you got down the rabbit hole. I guess 2 sort of questions, and you can pick which one you go with first. First is, what brought you in? Was there a specific person, a friend, a tweet, article that you read? And the other is, why did you make the transition, and why were you so fascinated by Web3?
Yeah, sure. So I can start by how I kind of got introduced. I think it's really more on the speculation side. So it was April last year when all the cryptocurrencies were just going up. And I had always stayed away from the space, although like it was kind of a relative, like I was more in the computer engineering science field. So a lot of people were interested. I just always stayed away. But then last year in April, all the prices were going up. There was COVID. So like we were all locked out at home. So I finally had like the time. And seeing all the prices boom, I'm like, maybe I should just give this a shot. Like I didn't really have huge expectations. I just thought, okay, like maybe I should invest a bit. I'll go on holidays or something. That was my thinking. And then I kind of set up my exchange, bought a few cryptocurrency tokens and coins, etc. And then everything started to go down. So I think I bought it at like the worst possible time when, I don't know, like Ethereum was over 4,000 or something like that. And then I'm like, okay, this crypto thing isn't working. Let me try NFTs, because then everyone was buying NFTs. Like it was all over the internet. And there wasn't like a specific thing I read. It's just the cryptocurrency. When I started to get into that, I heard about NFTs and started to be interested. Maybe I'll buy and again go on holidays. So for me, like I think this was around May at the time, May last year. So I set up, my own MetaMask, found out about OpenSea, kind of got my first NFT. And that was like the what do you say, like the light bulb moment for me. I think there were 3 things interesting. So first of all, it was a very easy user experience, right? I don't think crypto is an easy user experience, but after I got like the initial onboarding stage, it was easy to like just approve and have that thing in my wallet. The second thing, which was really interesting, was that I could see the full transaction. And coming from like a very corporate background, that's like super unique to have that much transparency. I found that super interesting. It was like really the open source world kind of here as well. And And yeah, I guess the third thing was like, it was mine. So I had never like, yeah, you buy like all these stuff on like Sims and Club Penguin and stuff like that, but they're like in-game assets, which you don't actually own. So this was kind of different. And that's when I said, okay, like, let me try and understand a bit more. But I wasn't super hooked at that point. I was just like, okay, like this NFT thing is more than something, you know, just going on holidays, but spend some time to understand. So it was summertime when I was just like really reading, listening to podcasts, kind of trying to understand what NFTs are, what all these applications are. Also the different cryptocurrencies, I didn't really know like a lot. I was just always staying away. So yeah, I think that was when I started to discover, like I started to be interested to understand the technology stack. Because I was coming from a solution architect, like software engineer background as well. I was really curious to see how this actually works. And then I said, let me just get a deep dive, like try to build something myself. And I started following some people on Twitter. And I started following Nader Dabit, who is like one of the most influential like Web3 developer relations. And I saw him start this developer DAO. And I was following Nader's tutorial, like he had he was someone which I was really looking up to. And I saw like he's starting this DAO, and I'm like, okay, I missed this crypto token thing, I missed the NFT thing, I'm not gonna miss this DAO thing, whatever it is. I'm just gonna give it a shot. And I hopped on developer DAO. It was like, you just had to pay the gas fee to mint the NFT to get in. And I followed the instructions. It was my first time like minting from Etherscan. So I got that NFT, hopped onto the server, and this was a server, I think it was, yeah, we're kind of approaching September time. So there was like all these developers coming in there, like everyone asking like, what is this thing? How does this work? Like, how do I even code something? Like, what do you use? You know, it's just like a different architecture. And then I'm there, I see like a lot of developers coming in, asking the same questions like myself. And then I said, okay, I want to really start to build something and write about this for my own purpose, because I had so many notes and I couldn't really keep track of them. So let me just start this, you know, blog where I write about it, write about what I'm doing. Didn't really have any expectations, just post what I find. And yeah, so I started like doing that. I made myself like 100 days Web3 challenge, because otherwise I wouldn't do it every day. So I started that thing. I started to write what I was finding, and especially getting like a lot of energy from people coming in, developer DAO, having the same questions as myself, seeing all the people like super helpful, helping me out, answering questions, because it was hard to get questions. Like, you didn't really know when to start. I think there's a lot more resources right now. But when I was starting out, it's like, okay, how do I start? What do I do? There were only a couple of tutorials out there. So I started that blog, got more involved, and like met a lot of people. People were super helpful, which was super different as well, right? Like, it's a random person on the internet that I meet, and that person is taking like an hour to meet with me to answer my questions. So that was like really interesting. I got in because I saw the prices going up, but what really hooked me and like why I still stayed was the community effect. And I was never part of any internet communities before, so that was kind of weird to me as well. So I started to write more. I started to be more involved, just meet people, share my experience. And at some point, it just made so much sense to switch over, because I was super more interested in this space than what I was doing outside. So yeah, that's kind of, does that answer the questions anywhere?
Very much. And you're not the only one that comes in and buys at the top. I think that's actually very, very common for new people. It's actually exactly what happened to me. I right. Literally bought last year at that exact same time when it was at the top. So I'm with you. Great. Before we dive more into the Web3 stuff, I just have a quick question. So you're a developer, you were kind of in with a lot of people who were interested in crypto before you got into it. You didn't start until prices got up. Why didn't you get into it? Was there like, did you have a bad like perception of crypto? Was there like, I don't know, someone did something to you or told you something about it that was bad? Or is it just, you just didn't really care? You're not into finance. And then once prices got up, you're like, I should check this out. Was there anything in particular?
I think that's a great question, because I think that's like one of the main issues, I guess, with the crypto space, is that it just has a really bad narrative. I think like this, like unless you get in, like I knew about it. Yeah, like there's this thing called Bitcoin, Ethereum, but it's just purely on the speculation side unless you kind of get past and try to research more. So
Right.
I was just never interested in like trading, doing it was just, this is internet money used for bad stuff. So yeah, it just like, it was not something which I thought would have like the technology that I saw here or the communities that I saw.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's super common. I think a lot of people have that same sort of feeling, and then prices go up enough and it's like, well, whatever. I'm gonna join in anyway.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, like also I think it got like more like not mainstream adoption, but it got more people in with like everything going up. It's like, oh, okay, like even if I don't believe this, like why is everything booming? It can't purely be speculation. So you kind of decide to take a step further. But yeah, like it was everywhere. Like more exchanges kind of popped up. Lots
Right.
like I'm in Turkey, so like we had like television advertisements on cryptocurrency exchanges. So at that point, it's like, okay, like if this is on TV, maybe I should try it out.
Right. I think the other thing that helps is like NFTs, DAOs. It brought a whole new, like so many new use cases to the space. And so once you're here, if you don't care about speculation or price go down, there's still other things you can do other than price. I think that's really interesting. Can you sort of talk about? So you got involved with the DAO. Is it, what's the DAO called again? Developer DAO, I believe. And are you still a part of that? You are?
So I am still part of the DAO. I'm not as active as I would like to be honest.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm still part of the DAO. Try and follow a couple of channels, a couple of projects. But yeah, I'm there.
And did that lead you into your full-time position now that you have in Web3 with Helium, or how did you end up landing that role?
It had a major effect. So like with Developer DAO, I saw like a lot of people coming in. I was also sharing my articles there, getting feedback, kind of talking with a lot of people, making the connections there. And then like I think a lot of people were interested in the content. It kind of got bigger and bigger. And I kind of got my opportunities from Twitter, which is very interesting. I would never expect that coming from a very corporate side of things. But the DAO was super effective in terms of me getting there and like being okay, like this, there's this person who's creating content. This is the content, like kind of amplifying me and giving feedback. I was just kind of taking that in, meeting a lot of people. And I definitely think it was very effective as well.
Can you talk a little bit about, I think a lot of people coming into Web3 are very scared of Discord. Am I correct in assuming that Developer DAO was in Discord?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you just talk a little bit about what it was like when you first came in to Developer DAO? And clearly you're very good at building community naturally yourself. And maybe Developer DAO had some mechanisms in place to enable people to meet and build community. But I think a lot of people come into Discord and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. They don't know how to build a relationship. They don't know how to meet people. They don't know what to do. And then they just leave and they miss out. So would love to hear a bit about your experience and how you built community.
Yeah, sure. So I think Discord was a very scary place for me in the start as well. I was in too many different Discord groups. There were too many people like pinging, tagging like at everyone's, at peers. And then like, I just couldn't keep up with all the different conversations, too many channels. So like, I think it took me some time to kind of eliminate, like you really can't be everywhere every time. There's just too many things going on, right? I think that's one of the main, like everyone in Web3 gets burned out. Like it's just a lot of things going on at the same time. So what worked for me was, I'm just going to focus on 2-3 things. I'm going to be in only 2-3 channels. So just choose the ones which you like. And you have a lot of choices, right? You don't have to be like a very technical or very like, you can choose whatever area you like. There are just too many projects going on, but don't try to be in everyone. And I think I was trying to be in every single one of them. So I was just overwhelmed. I wasn't enjoying it a lot. So then I kind of grouped I grouped the Discord channels to what I want, what I don't want, chose the ones which I want to stay in. So that's why I'm kind of only active in like 2 or 3 different Discords right now. It's just not sustainable otherwise. Like, it's just too much going on at the same time. Already the space is too much. So like, you're already here trying to unlearn what you learned before. And then you hop onto Discord and then there's like everyone saying something different. So I was super scared of Discord. I didn't want to open it at all. But now that I kind of have that sorted out, it's way better. So yeah, like it wasn't the best. It wasn't we weren't best friends in the start.
Yeah, I find there's a big learning curve to Discord. It's like as soon as you get in there, like, holy shit, this thing is crazy.
Yeah.
There's just too much you can do. There's so much going on. And then once you sort of like start to use it, you're like, actually, wow, this is really powerful. You can do so much here if you, one, declutter, which I did the same thing. I was in like a million Discords when I first joined. I was like, what am I doing? I don't know what's going on in any of these. Yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve, which same with just crypto in general, learning curve for that too. But like you said, you got to go down the rabbit hole. That's the key thing. If you don't go down the rabbit hole, you can't. It's hard to understand or get involved in the space. Can you talk a little bit about what Helium is first of all, and then why you were drawn to Helium, or why you started there?
Yeah, and that's a great question because so let me start by what Helium is. I think the best way to describe Helium is it is a business model for deploying large wireless networks. So the first network of this sort is the network for IoT devices. It's called the LoRaWAN network. So these are like sensor, GPS trackers, those kind of like small devices you would connect. But this is not also the last network of this sort. It's also building a 5G network. And the way Helium works is it basically allows individuals to be participants in the telecom industry. So for example, like when we think about the traditional telecom model, it's, these large telecom providers, they buy the land, they go and set up their network towers and provide coverage around the area. And for doing that, they also have to pay, like they are the only people paying for the marketing, for the sales, for all these operations. So it's a very high cost industry to get into as well. What Helium does is, let's actually allow individuals like you and I to get a device, which is called a hotspot. And this hotspot is basically a combination of a crypto miner / network cellular tower, not necessarily a device you would have at home, but it made it very user friendly. So like we can get this device. With this device, we provide coverage around our area. And for doing so, we earn rewards. We earn HNT tokens, which is Helium's native token. So it's a very different way to look at how you have telecom providers operate. Like it's an interesting way to set up a network. And I was at the networking space already. So I kind of had an idea of how the networking telecom providers work, how the operations work inside. And when I learned about this, I'm like, oh, this is super interesting. And there was a lot of people interested in Helium as well. I think Helium was more on the networking side, not more on the crypto side. So it was kind of like the intersection of crypto and networking for me. So like my domain and what I'm interested in right now. And again, like I found the idea very interesting, and I was already part of the community. I was like, oh, this is like super cool. Let me kind of get my own, see how it works. So I was already part of the community. And one other thing, which I think was very effective, was in my projects when I was working with IoT devices, smart cities, right? Smart cities. Everyone wants to make smart cities, but they mostly fail because you don't have the infrastructure to do that. So I had directly seen like the problems, the failed projects because you don't have the demand side there, the supply side there. So that was kind of like, oh, like this is both a crypto project, network project. I'm already part of the community. It was just something which I found super unique, like a real life use case, which I was already participating in, that it just made a lot of sense for me to kind of move, bring with me the networking side of things and the crypto side of things as well.
When you say that you're part of the community, was that a Discord community as well? Or because Helium, is this a DAO? Is it a centralized company? Or what's the structure of this?
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually a great question because I didn't mention that details. But basically, the Helium community works is, so today there are over 700,000 hotspots kind of providing coverage.
Wow.
We just
Wow.
we just crossed the 700 mark, I think yesterday. There's also 3 million in the back order. So like it's growing exponentially. So basically, like, hotspot owners, I guess, make up the community. And when you get this hotspot, you provide coverage. It's already over like thousands of cities, hundreds of countries. And there's even full coverage in some cities like San Francisco, New York, etc. So those hotspots basically power the network for IoT devices to connect to. So let's say, you have like your scooters, you can basically connect them to the Helium network. And then you will have, how can I say, like the connection will not stop when you leave your house, because normally, like, you have a scooter, you connect it to your home internet, you leave your home internet, gone, right? So this kind of provides this global, permissionless, and low-cost connection for all these IoT devices. And yeah, being part of the community was actually contributing, like having the physical device and providing coverage. So getting that device, and I think Helium did a very good job on making it a very user-friendly device. It's a small device which is exactly like your wireless router. You get it, you connect it to your, you kind of get the Helium app and you connect it to your application, and that's all the process from the end user side. There's nothing, extra you need to do. You just get the device, connect it to your phone, and there you go. You're now part of the network. You're part of the community. And Helium is now Helium is like the name of the network. I guess we can say that it's like the network and the model. The company which the core contributors were is now called Nova. So we just recently had a transition, and now we are where I'm working is the Helium Foundation, and we are basically foundation arm to the Helium network. So there are different areas where we support the network, such as governance, ecosystem development, technical oversight. So that's kind of what we're doing as the Helium Foundation.
Interesting. That's amazing. 700,000, by the way. That's incredible. It's super cool that it's kind of like all over the world.
Yeah.
Can you sort of talk about, so one of the interesting things with Web3 projects is tokenomics, right? Or the use case of tokens. And so you mentioned if you run I don't know what you called it. Was it a miner, or like if you run one of the hotspots, you're getting paid in that. Is there other utility of that token? Like, is this, you said governance, do holders of this token, like, are they able to like vote on something, or what is the purpose of that token other than just getting paid?
Yeah, exactly. So the governance is, as you said, like it's a community owned project, right? So like they can't just like changes to the blockchain are made by a community vote. So like we use a process called Helium Improvement Proposal, HIP, borrowed it from Bitcoin, Bitcoin's VIPs. So we have a similar structure with the Helium Improvement Proposals. Community members can make proposals and they are voted on by the community. If passed, the changes will be implemented. So that's that's the one most obvious utility, I guess you can say, for the token. But I think another very important one is, so to get devices up on the network, so you have your scooter, you want to use that scooter for the Helium network, you pay with something called a data credit. And a data credit is basically, the only purpose of this data credit is to use the network itself. So it's kind of like airplane air miles, right? So you can buy those air miles on the plane, and that's like the only purpose. You can use the wireless over there. So this kind of has a similar structure. And to get data credits, you need to burn HNT tokens. And the important thing about data credits is that it's not tied to the HNT price, which gives a reliable price for enterprises that want to use the network. And the only purpose of the data credit is, again, to use the network. So you basically burn HNT tokens, get data credits, and there you go. Like that's what you need to utilize the network.
And Helium is its own blockchain, correct? You're not building on top of like Ethereum or something. You've made your own.
It's a layer 1 blockchain. That's correct.
It's a layer 1. How long has it been around for?
Actually, that's a good question as well, because Helium didn't start out as a crypto project. So the main issue, like the Helium team started, I think around 2014. I don't exactly sure, but they started around that time. And the goal was again to provide like a coverage for IoT devices. So like a global permissionless network where all IoT devices could connect to. And the reason they started with that is because it's like the most underserved market in the telecom space. You can't have like all these, there was no solution to connecting like your scooter throughout the full city, because like it would lose connection at some point. And if you use like your cellular power, it would either be too costly, which doesn't make sense to like have your scooter to like use, like be that costly to use. So there was really no solution for that. And the team tried different ways to solve this problem, first without crypto, but it didn't really work out in the beginning. So I think they had like, I find this story quite interesting, but they had like the light bulb moment after reading the Filecoin white paper, if I'm not mistaken. And that was when they said, oh, okay, like let's incorporate crypto to this project and actually give economic incentives for people to do this, because it's obviously like too costly for one company to do it themselves. And that's crypto's superpower, right? You can create like an economic model, like you can give people economic incentives to actually contribute. So then they kind of pivoted. They said, okay, like let's create like a blockchain. At that time, there was only Ethereum. And this is, I think, 2018. If I'm not mistaken, 2018-ish, 17, 18-ish. There was only Ethereum at the time. And they kind of like foresaw that it would be too costly to have this on Ethereum, even with those gas fees and those prices, because this is, this obviously the cost structure is very important when you want people to pay and create the hotspots, etc. So they decided to create their own layer 1 blockchain. It's the Helium blockchain. And yeah, that's kind of like the story getting there, which is quite interesting, because it really shows, as I mentioned, right, you can coordinate economic activity with crypto, and this is like a real application of that.
Yeah, I love that. It's cool to see that. Like, obviously, this is a great idea, right? To have hotspots everywhere. Of course, it's a great idea. But it's interesting that it's not really that possible, because there's no incentives to do it if you're not using crypto. So it's really interesting to see like they actually needed crypto in order to make this work. You get a lot of people like, why do you need a token? Why do you need a token? Especially Bitcoin Max to do this. And it's like, well, there it is. It's for incentives for people to actually like build or run the infrastructure, right? Yeah, that's really cool. Jay, do you have any other questions on Helium or any of that?
Yeah, so just break it down for a listener. Let's say we have a listener who wants to do one of two things. Either wants to become a hotspotter. What would they have to do? What would the steps, and would there be any cost to them? And then let's say we have a listener that wants to use the network. What would they have to do? How would they use the network?
Yeah, that's a great point. So basically, I would definitely suggest to go to helium.com to find like all the information and all the links over there. But for hotspot, so if you want to be a hotspot host, and I can actually touch on this because we didn't mention before, but the hardware to create this hotspot is actually open source. So Helium itself doesn't create like the hotspot. It did in the start, but now it doesn't create those hotspots. But the manufacturers, like their list of approved manufacturers, and these approved manufacturers have, they create the hotspots basically. And Helium doesn't really, there's no licensing fee or anything by that. A lot of people assume that Helium earns something from those hotspot sales, but there's really nothing on that end. So there's a list of approved manufacturers, and you can see, which one's next to your city or your country, and you can get a hotspot device from the list of approved manufacturers on the website. And you get that device, it comes to you. You just need the Helium wallet application, create your Helium wallet, and there you go. You're now a participant in the network. That's like all that's needed from the user end. Obviously, you can also do like
how much do the devices cost? How much would it cost somebody to get a device?
I'm actually hesitant to give a price because it really varies. I think we have like over 60 manufacturers right now. So it really depends on like the manufacturer. Yeah. So there's like there's a lot of options. And now there's also the 5G rollout. So you can also get like a 5G Helium hotspot device as well. So I'm kind of hesitant to give a price, but there is a list of approved manufacturers which you can directly link to the website to find the device details. So yeah, like that it's a very easy onboarding process to get it set up on your network, on your home. And there's actually like extra steps you can take. So you can also like get an antenna to provide like wider coverage, etc. But yeah, like that's not like a necessary step. That's like extra for maybe people who are more hobbyists in that area, or like have have extra like interest to do that. And to use the network, again, you can also like, it's on the LoRaWAN network. So you can get a LoRaWAN compatible device, connect to the network. You basically create an account on Helium console. And then you kind of add your networks, add your devices to the network, and that's kind of your usage process. Again, you can get a data credit. You will directly have the access to get data credits over there. And yeah, you can connect your devices and up and running. And you can also find like a lot of use cases on the website as well. For example, there are use cases ranging from, I think the GPS tracker is the obvious one, right? You would like for logistics, etc. So like you want to have a package tracker. So that's like an obvious one. Then there's, I think, connected rat traps, which is pretty interesting. Wildfire use cases. There's a lot of, I think, also connecting like scooters. I'm in Istanbul, so like we have a lot of scooters going around. That kind of directly strikes me as an obvious use case. But there are like different options which you can also view over there. And yeah, I think.
So is it mostly,
I would definitely suggest there.
Mostly enterprise or businesses that are using the network, or is there also just like direct to customers that are using the network?
Yeah, so I think, so it's always like, first, I think that the thing was to build a network so that people can use, and then the use cases will arrive. So because there was never like a global permissionless, like low cost network, it was always hard to get those kind of use cases right now, especially like we're talking about smart cities. But what you need for that is you need connection to kind of connect all your, all your sensors in a city to actually have like a smart city, or like your bridges, right? When do the bridges open? You need to have like that connection over there. But because there was never such a supply of this network, I think we will still like keep on seeing more use cases kind of arise. I'm always shocked by the use cases that come, like even the rat traps is pretty interesting to me. But I'm super interested to see like more use cases come now that we actually have this network, because the network growth has been exponential. So now there is like the network to build IoT devices. And in fact, just at this point, like as the Helium Foundation, we're really interested in seeing more IoT use cases on the network. So we do have like a grants program. And if any of the listeners also interested, like please do feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to have a chat. My DMs are open. So yeah, like we're really looking forward to seeing more use cases on the network. And I think that's like one of the most, like that's the thing which I'm most exciting about.
Right. There's so much potential with this technology. I want to transition out of the Helium conversation for a second and go back to your blog. This is where I found you as well, was your blog. It seems it's become very popular in such a short period of time. But one of the topics that I think interests our listeners a lot is data, because a lot of us are marketers or building businesses in the space, and data is very important. Now, you wrote a blog all on this subject, and I'd like to pick your brain a little bit. So first, can you just talk about why data is so important in Web3? I know there's a big problem in the Web2 world, and this is sort of what you touched on in your blog. Can you first sort of just talk about what that problem is? And then we can sort of transition into how Web3 is enabling solutions for this problem.
Yeah, sure. So I like the data topic a lot. Basically, like in Web 2, so you sign up, like let's talk about Twitter. That's where we got connected. So you have a Twitter account. Your followers are actually Twitters, like they're not your followers. You kind of consent to giving Twitter your profile picture, your messages. So at some point, if Twitter says, okay, like suddenly we're removing the follower feature. So like all your followers are gone, right? And then you're going to be like, okay, like where did everyone go? So your data is not yours, basically. So like you give Twitter all your information, not just Twitter, but all the platforms, right? YouTube, wherever you log, the data is not actually yours. And I found this topic, so before it didn't really like, obviously this was like a huge problem. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, Facebook's scandals, etc. So that's like a huge problem. But I think most people were like knew about it, but it wasn't really something to take action upon, unfortunately, because it was just easy to use it that way.
Not a big enough pain point for most people, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, you know, okay, Facebook has my profile pictures, like so it was kind of like that. But what really got my attention over there is when I was working I was really working more on the solution architecture side, and I would spend like months like choosing the best database for the application, or like trying to understand like which database to use. And then all the apps would have their own databases. Like, for example, I go do my shopping on Amazon, and then I go to buy a plane ticket on a different application, so I have to give the same information again. So it's actually a burden for the user to like go to all these different applications and provide their, you know, data, whatever. And yeah, you know, obviously people don't mind sharing their data, but I would really like good user experience, right? I want to have a smooth experience to go, so that I don't enter my data several times on these platforms. And that's what I really saw was in Web3, because when you own your data, like your identity is tied to your, let's say, your MetaMask wallet, right? So I go, I sign in, I carry my data with me to all these different applications. So it basically gives me like composability, in the sense that I don't have to go and enter all these information on all these different platforms, which is really interesting, because it's really ties back to user experience, right? So it's not that it's bad, like it's obviously not good that they take my data, but when you see a direct benefit as the user, I think that has a difference, like, because yeah, like that's something to take action upon, right? Like I don't have to go in and enter my address information to the 10 different sites I do online shopping from, but I just enter it once and it's all there. And likewise for the application developers, right? They don't have to think about this extra data piece. They use the same library to kind of connect to the user's wallets. And that's it, right? You can actually focus on giving more value rather than taking more data.
So do you mean that for the applications for the builders, and I'm not a developer, so I don't really know this, but they don't have to go and build the database side of it, like you just said, like Amazon has to build their own database and Google has to build their own database and so on. And now you're saying to build an app, the developers don't even need to worry about that. It saves them a bunch of time, saves them a bunch of money, probably a bunch of complexity as well. They don't even need to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of like in the process. I know Ceramic Networks is definitely like a project which I'm super interested in, but they're building the data layer of Web3. So this is kind of like the blockchain, right? Ethereum is not the most efficient for data storage because it's going to be high cost. It's going to be like slow, and it's just not made for like user data, which you change as well. But what Ceramic is doing is they're building like a decentralized data network layer. So the data is part of the users. It's tied to your identity, which you connect to the network with. There's no single owner of this data. And you carry your data from application to application. So like when I sign into Zoom over here, I again, connect to my data, which is actually on Ceramic. It's again, peer-to-peer distributed. No one owns it. It's really mine. And then I connect, and then I go to like Twitter, sign in with the same credentials. Again, it's all mine, and I can change it anytime I want. And yeah, it's because the Web3 tech stack is kind of being built right now. And I think this data layer is very interesting, and we're going to see more use cases. I know there's one, I think it's called Orbis. I follow them on Twitter. I had recently like discovered them, but they're building like a decentralized Twitter, and they use Ceramic for the data layer. So basically, like when you sign up to their platform, it's really, your messages are actually yours. So you have, you can connect with your wallets. There's really no central power, no central database owning your data, but the data is on Ceramic Networks, which is again, a decentralized data network layer.
Right. I'm interested to get your thoughts on, I'd like to talk about the data side of things. And data is obviously really important for advertisers. It's for most businesses, like big tech businesses, how they make their money. And a lot of other smaller businesses, this is how they get their customers, is by running ads, right? So do you see that this completely disrupts it and ads go away?
Or what I think happens is now that we own our data, we can control which apps see or use certain parts of our data, and we can probably charge for that data, right? We can put a price on it and say, if you want to take my data, you got to pay me X amount or whatever. Do you think that, have you put any thought into that? And like, do you see that that's where it's going, or what are your kind of assumptions here?
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't like think a lot about that, to be honest, but now like thinking out loud, the way I see it is, what I really like about Web3 is that it's kind of like like you see a lot of networking effects, like network effects, you know, like you use it, I use it, and oh, it's mine. So like I have extra incentive to use it because I feel like I own the platform, which you do. Like it's not like signing up to Twitter and giving all that. But when you use something in Web3, it's like, because you have ownership, you have like extra incentives, which kind of like, I tell you, you tell them, you know, it kind of goes to the networking effects over there. But with owning data, what I see like the direct effect is platforms now trying to give more value. So it's not going to be like which platform has like Twitter right now. It's hard to leave Twitter because like everything is over there, right? You can't directly transition to another platform which provides the same value. But if you own the data, then you're going to choose the platform which provides the most value. So you can directly say, okay, like all of us, we're taking everything and we're going from Twitter to Orbis, right? If Orbis, you know, gives like an extra value layer. So I see that as the direct effect. But yeah, I don't know if that answers.
So by value, do you mean by like paying out, like incentive by getting paid, or what do you mean by value?
So it could be like, you know, it could be by paying out, like, I guess like more, so kind of giving any, like, it could be, you know, maybe like random rewards, like you mentioned, like airdrops or rewards. It could also be like providing better user experience. So whatever, like I'm not tied to the platform which has the most people or the most, you know, which I'm most invested in, but I can just take all this, go to the platform, like let's say they build another Twitter, which on the new Twitter, you can edit your tweets. I don't know, maybe they will do it on this Twitter now as well. But let's say they do that and I really want to edit my tweets, then I can directly go and take my Twitter followings profile with me.
Right.
So yeah, or they fix the DM issue. Like I think DMs on Twitter, like they're constantly lagging or like have some certain issue. So you're not tied to the platform, like you can choose.
That I think is one of the biggest unlocks for Web3, is just the ability where it's frictionless to move to another platform. Like right now, everyone hates, and I don't know why, but everyone hates Facebook because of the whole data scandals and all that. But everyone still uses it because you're like, well, what else are you gonna do, right? Like are you not gonna be on Instagram, right? We all are. And same with Twitter, everyone uses it, and you know, I'm sure people would like to go elsewhere, but it's very difficult. You got to create a new account. You got to try and bring all your followers over there. You got to start creating content over there. Like it's very difficult to move to another platform. Web3 just makes it a complete open marketplace, and it's like you just go where you're treated best, essentially. And this is true for social platforms. It's also true for like work, right? Like DAOs. If you don't like where you're working, you just hop onto another one, and you can buy some tokens and get involved there. It'll be true, I think, for the metaverse, right? If you don't like Meta's metaverse, go to another one, right? It's free and it's open, it's frictionless, it's so easy. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest unlocks for Web3 in my opinion.
And to that point, right, I think we usually lead with like decentralization, which of course is, yeah, like we're still like, I consider myself not that early, but I guess we're still early. So like it's important, yeah, like decentralized, but it's really a small group which kind of cares that it's decentralized. But I think we should be really leading with like the actual implications, like the actual benefits. To your point, right? You can change, it's up to you, you're kind of more in control. And that's why I'm really focused on like the narrative side, right? There's just so much things to do, and yeah, like us degens, we may like decentralization narrative, but I don't know if everyone does, right? I don't know if, yeah, I don't think my neighbors do, for example. Like
I don't think users care about decentralization, but I think the builders, the people that are building, care about decentralization. At least that's my theory. As we begin to wrap up,
I think that just to add in one thing, I think that what's really interesting about your narrative here is the narrative often is around the security and the safety and the ownership of data, but you're tying it into user experience, which that everybody cares about, right? Everybody wants a way better user experience. And that is a side, I don't hear that narrative as much as I hear the narrative of like, oh, well, we should have a way that somebody doesn't own our data or can't deplatform us or doesn't have the control or can't have the high take rate that they have because we have more share. Like those narratives you hear a lot, but the way that composability leads to better user experience, oh my gosh, like that is, everybody would want that. And that's much more of a mass network effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Go for it if you have
Yeah,
any.
I was just gonna like amplify that. Like I'm not any kind of maxi, I guess, but if I were to choose one, I would probably choose like user experience. So I think like we definitely need to focus more on yeah, like, you know, signing several MetaMask messages, even calling it like a crypto wallet. You know, it's not actually like just a wallet, right? It's a lot more than that. It's kind of like your entry to this world. But yeah, I think like the main issue is like, again, to the narrative. Like it should be more like, what does it directly benefit me, right? I don't see that in the narrative, like until I kind of fell down and researched for 5 months, then I understood.
I'm also a user experience maxi. I love that.
Yeah,
love that term.
I love
Someone tweeted that today and I retweeted. I was like, that's hilarious. Like I'm so in with that. So as we wrap up here, I just have a couple questions for you that maybe you can help out the users with. You've been in the space for not very long. I think you said you've been full-time in the space for what, 2.5, maybe 3 months. And I think you got in, you know, just last year, not even a year, I guess. But it seems like you have, I mean, you are already full-time, you're involved in some DAOs, you bought some NFTs, you obviously really understand the space, as we could tell from this conversation. Like, we have a lot of people that are joining our Discord and that are listeners to ours going, I want to get into Web3, I'm doing X and I want to learn more about Web3, or I want to start using Web3, but they don't know how. So 2 things. 1, how did you learn so much so fast? and then 2, like, for those who actually want to get involved and either want to start working or get a full-time job, like what sort of recommendations or advice do you have for them to get in?
Yeah, for sure. I think I did all the possible mistakes. So that was like my onboarding process, right? Like, especially when I found out about NFTs, and then it's like 2 a.m. on like a random Thursday, I see like a random tweet about this NFT drop. Everyone's saying, oh, it's like the biggest thing. I wake up, I need to get this NFT, pay like unnecessary gas prices. So I kind of like did all the mistakes coming in, and I guess I was just open and sharing them. I even like transferred the same NFT from my same wallet to the same wallet, for example. Like I was just not like, you have to be responsible when you're doing this, right? And I was kind of open and sharing this, just kind of trying to learn and sharing all these like roadblocks I get on the way. Again, I would suggest like to obviously be careful. I'm not like the best representation, but what really worked out is I went on and used the products. So just try them out, right? A lot of people make comments and they don't even know what MetaMask is. So just, you know, get a wallet. You don't have to buy anything. You can just, you know, if you don't want to use Ethereum, you don't have to use Ethereum. You can get like a Phantom Solana wallet or whatever you really like. Just get a wallet, try and understand what you can do with it. There's probably not a lot of crazy things you can do at this point. I mean, there is, but you do need to like research a lot. And then go get yourself, well, this is not financial advice, but you can maybe try and get an NFT or something like that. So when I saw how that worked, and that was like, okay, this is more important, because a lot of people just listen to something, don't go ahead and do it. So I think like just to go ahead and do it, then you kind of understand and want to dig deeper. Like, I don't know anyone who entered the space and is unhappy that they entered the space. And I hear the same advice, like actually use the products, like actually do something. Like you really need to do something here, which I think will change. Like in the web, like traditional tech world, you kind of are automatically directed to the path which you can go through. But over here, you have to be proactive. So
Web3 rewards
my
the
advice.
doers is something I like to say. And I mean, this
Exactly.
podcast, this episode is called the Web3 DOer Spotlight, right? We're
Yeah.
trying to reward you as well. But I mean, it actually does reward the doers, because oftentimes if you're using or trying out these protocols and it's early stage, you end up getting airdrops and tokens. So that's not even just learning, you're probably going to get paid if you do it. So that's one of the beautiful things about Web3.
100%, right? Like, I think I missed out on all the airdrops, but there's more to come probably. So
For sure.
like, you should really just try them out, like give them a shot. Like, don't just be like very negative. Like I was obviously in the start, like no crypto, but just try it out. And what I really like about the space is that it's very open and public, and people are super helpful. That's like the community side again, as I mentioned, right? Like I fell in love with the tech, but the community really got me hooked. Everyone was just super willing to help out. That's really when I kind of got more onto Twitter. I wasn't really on Twitter before, but I just met a lot of amazing people, seeing like all these smart people like interested in this tech, like building something, or like, follow the smart people. That's kind of like my thinking going in. But yeah, like I really like that it's very open and it's very public, and like it's easy to engage with communities, but you have to do something. You can't wait for someone to come and be like, hey, shall I tell you what you do?
Right. I think one of the interesting things, as you say this, it just kind of made me think of this, is like a lot of people are afraid because they don't want to screw up, or they think they don't know what they're doing. And, they're like, oh, there's so many other people that do know what they're doing, so I don't want to get involved in a DAO, or I don't want to because I'm afraid to. And it's like, we're all new. No one is an expert in this space, because it's like the stuff just started. Like we just started using NFTs, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, we just started getting involved in DAOs, like kind of in the mainstream just recently. So it's like, if you're just getting it now and you're kind of afraid, it's like, listen, we're all still figuring it out. We all still make a ton of mistakes. Like no one knows what they're doing right now. We're working on that.
I don't think there are any experts. Like, no way. If someone says they're an expert, like, don't trust them.
yeah, exactly. All right, so just as we wrap up here, Eda, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online? Where's your blog? Give a little minute for your own personal show here.
Yeah, sure. I can give a shameless plug here. So I am as Eda Tweets on Twitter, Eda Tweets _, and over there you'll also find a link to my blog. I write on Hashnode. I think it's eda.hashnode.dev. But my Twitter my Twitter page will tell you the exact handle. Like, I don't want to give a wrong one.
Awesome. We'll also put in the show notes below, of course.
Yeah,
for sure. And any final thoughts to share? Anything you want to share before we finish up?
This was super. Thank you so much for having me. I do hope that we get like more people in the space. I'm super excited to get more. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great chat.
Thank you. It's been just an absolute pleasure to hear your story and to hear about Helium and all the projects you're working on, and to meet a fellow user experience maxi. That's exciting, because I think we need more of that. Yes, absolutely. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you have yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.